in my weird sense of humor. Another fish story by Jesus. And yet, what school of fish do we come from? Jesus is responding to the customs of his time, and as he does so, he's also seeking to teach not only Peter and the disciples, but also us. How do we respond to being God's people? How are we God's disciples? How do we put into effect the teachings of Jesus and the traditions of the church? Jesus, full with knowledge and grace, tried to explain what was to come. That totalness of giving to us his life, for us his life, that he would die, but be raised on the third day. And the disciples had to wonder, what are you talking about? What do you mean? It's like, isn't there another way? And Jesus, as he responded to Peter before, says, you're not thinking as God does, you're thinking as human. And yet, throughout our history, we've had so many examples of those seeking to follow God's grace. Yesterday, we celebrated the death anniversary and the feast of Saint Dominic, 800 years, and of his life of coming to know God, Jesus, and then seeking to preach and form the community of Dominicans. Today, we celebrate St. Teresa Benedicta of the Cross, often known in her name of Edith Stein, who offered her life that we might understand God's love and grace. Tomorrow, St. Lawrence, a deacon, one of the first deacon to die. We celebrate coming up this week Maximilian Kolbe, another one who, like Edith Stein, died in Auschwitz, giving their lives for something much deeper, beyond our lives, and seeking to live out that teaching of Jesus, of love and care, of service, that we belong to Jesus, that ultimately the tax has already been paid by Jesus. And as we seek to live that out, how do we do so in today's world, in our time, in our situation? Despite a pandemic, despite inequalities, how do we respond of realizing Jesus asks us to continually share that message of love and of care, a message Edith Stein and her understanding grew in. A child of Jewish parents like Jesus, who continually thought to try to understand, and in falling away from her faith, then ultimately in her studies came back to want to follow Jesus in the Catholic faith more deeply, and ultimately offering herself as a Dominican to the teachings of God, and finally even giving her life in response to that. In our lives, we too are asked, how do we respond? How do we seek to fall in love with God, and in that love and in that care, in our time, in our experience, in our situation, seek to share that love, to respond, to mirror back, as St. Clare would say, the love that Jesus offers to us. May we truly allow Jesus to be seen through our example, our life, our words, and our attitude.